And the more people who get infected, the more people will end up having to be hospitalized with the virus. Our expectations are that these figures will increase further over the next 2 to 3 weeks, and they'll increase rapidly. The average burden on intensive care units in Europe is about a third of the highest point during the spring. But it's likely that the burden will increase because of the higher infection rate combined with the winter flu season. In comparison with the spring, there's one thing that's striking really, which is that no member state is unaffected this time. Central and Eastern European countries are also seriously affected. And we're dealing with two enemies at this time. We're dealing with the coronavirus itself and also corona fatigue, i.e. people are becoming more and more fed up with the preventative measures against corona. And I can understand that people are suffering because of this virus. For months, we've all been making sacrifices. And I have to say that I'm impressed with what people have accepted for such a long time. People are paying a very high price, a social price and an economic price. A lot of people have seen their mental health affected as well because of the ongoing restrictions on their personal freedoms and the social isolation that we're all suffering from. But now is not the time to relax these measures. The situation is very serious, but we can still change it. We can still slow down the spread of the virus if everyone shoulders their share of the responsibility. So this responsibility has to be shouldered by everybody at all levels, at a regional level, a local level, in member states, throughout the European Union. We have to stop the spread of the virus until we have a vaccine and better treatment to protect everybody's health.
This means that everyone can and everyone must contribute. What we are expected to do is simple. We need to wear masks and stick to hand hygiene. And we need to avoid the 3 C's: crowds, close contacts, and closed spaces with poor ventilation. And only by protecting ourselves and each other, we can reduce the spread of the virus and thus reduce the impact on our lives and our livelihoods.
But we're better prepared now than we were in the spring. Healthcare professionals, for example, know more about the disease and they know more about how to treat their patients. The citizens are better informed, and governments have gained experience and expertise from what happened in the spring. In July, the European Commission asked member states to prepare for a second wave, and we took action. We insisted that member states increase their testing capacity, and we launched a joint procurement of 350 million euros. So 350 million euros in order to do that. We also created a European gateway to allow for interoperability between the COVID tracing apps throughout the whole of Europe. And the German, Italian and Irish apps are already connected to this gateway. There are 18 others that should connect in November. So in total, it's 23 member states that have an app in place or are developing it. And 52 million have already downloaded the app. And I would urge all citizens to do this. Every user counts. And the success of the app depends on the number of users.
We have remedied initial shortages of medical and other countermeasures through rescEU stockpiling and working with manufacturers. We initiated joint procurement for protective personal equipment, ventilators, and intensive care medicine. We insisted on lifting national export restrictions for critical supplies, and we suspended customs duties and VAT on such items. We set up green lanes to allow the proper functioning of the single market and transport. We introduced a coordinated approach to travel restrictions based on common color codes for risk zones. And we concluded so far 3 advanced purchase agreements for safe and effective vaccines so that they can be available to all member states at the same time on the same conditions. 3 others are now in the pipeline. Now, we must build on these foundations with additional measures. And taken together, the package we presented today enables a coordinated approach to data sharing, to testing, to medical and non-medical equipment, to travel, and to vaccination strategies. We are all in this together. No member state will totally emerge from the crisis until everyone does. That is why you will hear us stress the need for cooperation, coordination, and solidarity. Tomorrow, the heads of state and government will meet virtually. The aim is better coordination. I will call for greater data sharing to the data platform with ECDC. This will help us to know, for example, where there is ICU capacity or cross-border patient care can be organized when needed. We will also set up a European platform of national science advisors to COVID in order to exchange and align the advice given to the different governments. We recommend effective and coordinated testing strategies in the package of today, and we recommend increasing capacity for testing. Rapid antigen tests are now coming to the market. These can play a significant role, but we will propose an EU approach to approval and use, because only then there will be mutual recognition of tests and of test results. For our part, we are now mobilizing 100 million euros from the emergency support instrument to purchase rapid tests that we will then distribute to the member states. And we launch a joint procurement to make more available. We call on all member states to link up national apps to the European Gateway in November. We call on member states to participate in a speedy joint procurement of essential supplies, such as medical equipment for the vaccination. We're proposing today to extend for another 6 months the VAT exemptions for the purchase of vaccines and testing kits. And we call on member states to facilitate travel when necessary. So we ask to work together on an EU passenger locator form. We need to maintain for now restrictions on traveling to the EU, but today we encourage member states to make it easier for couples and for families, for example, to reunite. We also propose to extend the green lanes beyond road freight to rail, air, and water. And finally, in line with our EU vaccination strategy of the 15th of October, we call on member states to prepare now national vaccination plans and to review them now at EU level. We need to be prepared for the arrival of the first vaccines. There's a lot to do. There are many, many issues to be considered for an effective vaccine deployment. Just think of what kind of infrastructure will be needed for the storage, for example, the cold chains that have to be established, or the question, what groups of population should be vaccinated first? Here we already gave a recommendation, so we asked the member states to work with that. But there's one thing I will be very clear. We will not compromise on the safety of vaccines. There are many issues to be considered, so finally.
Hi, everyone. So welcome to our class. And this is posted just a couple days ago. You can see there's only 122 viewers. Note who posted it, the Directorate General of Trade in the European Commission. Handel is the German word for trade. So the Directorate General for Trade. And note, among other points to note, note how she switches, Ursula von der Leyen switches in her language from English to French. I don't know if she ever speaks German. I don't think so. I think she just speaks English and French in this presentation. The two official business languages of the European Union. But in other videos, like when she's presenting to the European Parliament, she'll also speak in German there on those occasions. This just calls to mind, before we go to attendance, some of the points that you all, some of you mentioned in your midterms, right? This is all very exciting and interesting. It's new, and we've never experienced such a pandemic in 102 years since the early part of the 20th century. Now we have the European Union playing a role in addressing the pandemic and calling for collaboration, coordination, cooperation, and solidarity is the word she uses. European solidarity, again and again and again. That term of European solidarity appears in the rhetoric of the EU leaders. And she mentions sums of money that will be spent and that have been allocated, and it all is very interesting and very exciting because it's very new, right? I mean, we've never seen an international organization take such a powerful leading role in public communications regarding addressing in emergencies like this that are confronting everybody on a very personal level. But some of you pointed out when you compare what the European Union is doing with the amount of money, for example, that the state of Germany or the state of France or the state of Italy are spending, and the resources they're allocating to dealing with the pandemic on the national level, I mean, it's much greater than the resources that the European Union is allocating, 100 million euros for acquiring more tests and so on. Whereas, of course, the member states are spending hundreds of billions of euros to meet this challenge. Because this is new and different and interesting, because it's new and different and exciting, it gets a lot of media coverage and coverage in class, like we have right now in this class, right? But I'm not showing you, what the French government is doing, or what the Italian government is doing, what the German government is doing. Even though when you add all those national efforts together, it's several times, if not more, the size of resources being devoted to dealing with the pandemic than the European Union. I mean, the European Union's role, as you get a sense from this video, is in coordinating, facilitating the coordination and collaboration, cooperation of the member states. All right, they have their national plans. They discuss with each other what's best practice in dealing with these different issues in terms of benchmarking and bench practice, but it's still national governments are by far the most powerful and important actors in dealing with this crisis. And the role of the European Union is to facilitate that sharing of best practice, that facilitate that sharing of information, to facilitate communication, to facilitate cooperation, facilitate efforts that are basically being driven by the member states, right? So that illustrates some of the points that we discussed earlier. But before I forget, we should do the attendance for this class. So let me go to Cyber Campus, and I went to, of course, resume the share. And so we go here, and we go to attendance, and here we are in week 9, add smart attendance, and your lucky number is 646 is your lucky number. 646 is the number to enter into smart attendance, 646, okay? So I guess I just let that run and then move on, right? 646, and then we go back to the lesson plan. And let me open up my lesson plan, and got to make sure the lesson plan is open so that I can share it with you first. I think that's here. There we go. What happened? Okay, here's the lesson plan. So we have to make sure that we give enough time for the debate during the second hour today between me and Ms. Hyoryong Park and Park Hyoryong. And on the question of to South Koreans, the EU's response to the consequences of the COVID-19 pandemic are steps forward to creating the United States of Europe. So, and this is the last class that we are devoting to chapter 5. And let me open up those notes. And so here you can see we've covered most of these notes already. And so let me, what do I want to highlight here? I think we might want to highlight here that this is notable. Keep in mind, this book was published 2 years ago, this latest edition. I think it's the 5th edition of the textbook. So it's a very popular textbook. Know what it says in box 5.2 of chapter 5. The EU cannot run a deficit, unlike national governments, but it is going to start, as we covered a number of times, right? With the coronavirus pandemic, the European Union is going to borrow, or is committed to borrowing up to 750 billion euro. Well, yeah, 750, well, hundreds of billions of euros, because some of that money is coming from the budget, the European Union budget. But the European Union will borrow hundreds of billions of euros on the international debt market, on the international financial debt market by selling euro bonds, corona bonds, as they've been unofficially called, corona bonds. So the EU is going to start running a deficit because the Commission is going to be buying those bonds in the name of the European Union. And those bonds are going to be selling those bonds. Sorry, we'll be selling those bonds for you and me and millions of others investors to buy them as an investment. And the European Union is going to pay us back, or is committed to paying us back. So the EU is going to run a deficit. So again, that's a change that is a consequence of this crisis that we're dealing with. So we already covered some of this. We discussed the common agricultural policy, and we talked about how the member states have to transpose the directives of the European Union into their national policymaking process, into their own countries. And so again, just to highlight that the member states and their administrations and their executive branches and their governments play a very powerful role, the leading role in actually implementing European Union policy. Jurisdiction of the European Union. European Union jurisdiction in terms of its responsibilities over policy areas is narrower than for national governments, but of course it appears to be expanding now that significantly, now that the European Union is indeed going to start running a budget deficit in terms of borrowing on international financial markets to dispense that money to the Eurozone states, to the European Union states, sorry. Not just to the Eurozone, to all of them, including the ones that are not yet in the European Union. So, the European Union is limited, for example, in dealing with healthcare, but again, that might well be changing with the COVID-19 pandemic. You just saw with the in the video with the European Union Commissioner Ursula von der Leyen highlighting that the European Union is going to play an important role again in coordinating, collaborating, cooperating, facilitating the coordination and collaboration of the member states in sharing COVID-19 data, in developing applications, computer applications that will be useful across national boundaries. Coordinating and cooperating in preparing to distribute the vaccines when they become available. Those first vaccines are going to be quite a challenge, right? Because according to what I've been reading, and I guess it applies to the AstraZeneca vaccine too, the British vaccine, which is on the supposedly the front, the one that's most advanced. But at least the Pfizer one and the Moderna one in the United States, when they're developed, they need to be stored at minus 90 degrees centigrade, minus 95 degrees centigrade. So they need to be stored at in temperatures that only laboratories have, laboratory equipment's available, dry ice type temperatures. And so, and keep in mind that hundreds of millions of people are supposed to receive these vaccines. So, I mean, that's a massive process. So later generations of vaccines may be different, will not require, exceptional refrigeration or 2 doses, like the Moderna and Pfizer vaccines require two doses. Johnson & Johnson vaccine in the US is being developed. It will come later, and that will require just 1 dose if it's safe, 1 dose, and not require exceptional cold to refrigerate it, but that's months in the future. And so you see the European Union apparently is acquiring more healthcare competencies in this COVID-19 response, because the pandemic requires, to address it successfully, European and global cooperation, coordination of national government policy. It cannot be addressed by national member states alone. A national member state cannot solve this problem by themselves. They have to cooperate with the rest of the world. They have to, because if they don't, the virus will come back, or the virus will interfere with trade. I mean, if you're an exporting country like China, and the United States is still mired in the coronavirus vaccine, China's ability to do business with the United States will be strongly affected, obviously, in an inhibitory way, as an obstacle. So, and that, of course, lends itself to the European Union acquiring more and more competence even in healthcare, insofar as we're dealing with healthcare issue that is by its nature transnational. It's a global transnational issue that can only be solved by global cooperation. And keep in mind also that, as I pointed out, I think in previous classes, that typically when the European Union in the past got more competencies is the formal legal term for European Union involvement in a policy area. For example, the European Union has sole competence in the agriculture policy making, right, through the common agricultural policy, but it shares competencies in other areas. For example, in energy policy, for example. But in other areas, it's relatively limited. Like, for example, in these areas, the competency of the European Union is very limited. It says that the member states have not given the EU competence in these areas: healthcare, urban regeneration, family assistance, pensions, public health, industrial relations, childcare, poverty alleviation, abortion. This is very controversial today, right? Given that in Poland, the Law and Justice Party government that's been in power for several years now passed a law, the courts, have made rulings based upon laws passed by Law and Justice Party that basically make abortion impossible, illegal in Poland. And of course, the European Union, this is not in the European Union competence. The European Union has been careful to avoid this issue because long before Poland, for example, joined the European Union, Ireland was in the European Union. And Ireland is a very strongly Roman Catholic country, like Poland, in which Irish nationalism symbolically focuses on the Roman Catholic Church as an institution that is a critical component of Irish national community self-identity. What is an Irishman? An Irishman is somebody who's Catholic, because the British are not. And so the European Union has been careful not to be involved in abortion, but still the European Union has different voices, different bodies that make statements. Anybody can have an opinion on anything, including the European Parliament. And of course, the European Union claims it's on the forefront of promoting gender equality and including for women, and that arguably may bear on this issue of abortion access. If women are to be truly equal with members of society, should they have complete control over their bodies when they're pregnant, for example, and including the right to abortion. So this is a very sensitive topic, but you can find, even though there's not an official European Union policy on abortion access, you can find lots of people in the European Union policymaking institutions who have an opinion and who express their opinion, right? Keep also in mind another interesting facet of this process. As I'm preparing for a class next semester on European politics and society, I'm using a textbook that just came out this year to replace the one I've been using in previous years. And this textbook this is quite an impressive book. So far that I've gone through it. And they make the point, I think, who does? The authors in this edited book make the point that the European Union has acquired, institutions have acquired more competencies and authorities without the European Union entering into intergovernmental conferences to amend the treaties, to agree on amendment to the European Union treaties, the two treaties in particular called the Treaty on the Functioning of the European Union and the Treaty on European Union. And for decades prior to most recently, the Lisbon Treaty, the granting of new powers to the European Union, new competencies to the European Union happened along with the agreement to modify the treaties. And that book I just showed you emphasizes that the European Union, particularly since the constitutional treaty was defeated in a French referendum and in a Dutch referendum, and then the European Union compensated with the Treaty of Lisbon that came into effect. They are European Union member states. Again, the member states have agreed to give the European Union more competencies in different policy areas, sometimes quite strikingly, doing it without having a formal treaty modification and amendment process. So here we are, 12 years since the Treaty of Lisbon was signed, and 11 years since it came into effect in 2009, and the European Central Bank and European Commission are getting all of these additional powers, with the European Central Bank announcing that it will do whatever it's necessary back in 2012 to keep countries in the Eurozone. In other words, the European Central Bank will print money to buy Greek or Italian or anybody's bonds if the government is having difficulty selling them on international financial markets in order to borrow money to cover budget deficits. I mean, that's tremendous acquisition significance, right? And that there's not been an official amendment of the treaty for that to have occurred. And of course, right now with the coronavirus, what the European Commission is going to start running a budget deficit, right? So, all right, no longer the case. And it's been done without the European Union officially modifying the treaties through a formal process. And then the leaders of the heads of state and government come together and they sign the treaty. And this treaty is, they're not doing it that way anymore because they don't want to risk rejection of these treaties, which typically happen in referendums, right? Referendums. Italy never has a referendum. Germany never has referendums on European Union treaties. But France has to have referendums according to the French Constitutional Court on treaties of exceptional significance. And same with the Dutch, the Netherlands. And in Ireland, every treaty has to be approved through a referendum. So that's an interesting trend. That's an interesting trend. So we can see that now the European Union is getting more competencies in healthcare, even though the book says that that's no longer that's not the case, right? Healthcare, including pandemic, through the pandemic response, so in those areas in which well, okay. Now, having said what I just said, the European Union. I haven't seen that the European Union has adopted legislation on the pandemic response. The member states are still acting under unanimity. Okay, you saw in that video that Ursula von der Leyen was speaking, in which she said that they're emphasizing collaboration, cooperation, and coordination among the member states and on behalf of European solidarity. But there's no reference to a European Commission proposal coming to the European Parliament to be voted on, and the Council of the European Union voting on it through qualified majority voting. It's still technically through unanimity, but still the European Union is getting all of these authority, for example, to develop national, regional cooperation coordination applications for the COVID tracing, for example. Again, even without formal legislation, the European Union is acquiring more and more de facto authority. I guess one of the conclusions to make here is that even though the pandemic response emphasizes unanimity, the European Union goes ahead and moves forward in the form of its leadership in the Commission and elsewhere, and they try to do what they can until somebody in the European Union member states, among the 27 member states, complain. If they don't complain, they continue to move forward in terms of coming up with European Union proposals. If somebody complains, then they pretty much have to stop, right? But I can't see the European Union member states complaining about the European Commission being too active in terms of coordinating on this policy area because of the nature of the crisis. They have to cooperate. So the coronavirus relief program in terms of economic stimulus, that apparently does require that the European Parliament approve it. And I think the European Parliament must have approved it because I think the European Commission is moving forward. But the European Parliament and the Council of the European Union, I don't think they've come up with any kind. I haven't seen. I mean, all I'm looking at is the American newspaper reports, New York Times reports, which I read closely every day, and I haven't seen anything coming out of the European Parliament regarding legislation dealing with healthcare regarding the pandemic. I see other reports. I mean, the New York Times pays a pretty close attention to what the European Parliament does. Like, for example, here's a report on how the European Parliament has evidently in this discussion about that was in legislation that was is under debate and consideration through the Common Agricultural Policy, the European Parliament has agreed to allow the use of the term veggie burgers. Yay, veggie burgers. So you can call still a sandwich, right? A sandwich that is not made with meat, a burger, even though it's made with a vegetable substitute. And so lobby groups, including farming groups in the European Union, complain. This is, as you might read, I think next week, this is one of the largest farming lobby organizations in the European Union. And they were pushing the European Union to forbid calling vegetable-based substitutes burgers. You can't, you say that you shouldn't have veggie steak, veggie sausage. You shouldn't have that name, veggie sausage, veggie steak, veggie whatever, on items that don't have meat in them, that instead have a vegetable substitute. And so this is approved just a few days ago. So the European Parliament is considering this kind of legislation. And so if something was coming through the European Union, through the European Parliament on COVID-19 programs, I'm sure the New York Times would have reported on it. So evidently, even though the European Union leadership, like Ursula von der Leyen as the president of the European Commission, is very active in dealing with the pandemic, in terms of healthcare, still there's not been European Union legislation adopted. She moves forward. I mean, it's unanimous, of course. Everybody probably wants a computer application that you download to your phone that will allow all the national COVID tracing applications to integrate with each other. Who's going to oppose that? Nobody. No member state will oppose that. So that's easy. That's an easy issue, relatively easy, and politically not too difficult. And it goes on to say here that, but the European Union is continuing to maintain a ban on descriptions for referring to dairy items like milk, calling something yogurt style or cream imitation for non-dairy replacement. So you still, you cannot call something milk that is not made from cow milk or animal milk. So for example, what's very popular in the United States is soy milk. Or maybe you have it here in Korea too, right? Milk made from soybeans and soy milk. So the European Union forbids calling soy milk soy milk. You can't call it milk because it's not from an animal. It's made from soybeans. But in the US, we always say soy milk, or almond milk, or whatever, other kinds of products. So the European Union has kept that ban on using those kinds of terms. And they say that this decision to permit calling something veggie steak or veggie burger, the decision by the European Parliament, which it must have been through majority vote, right? The decision is a victory for environmental advocates over an EU farming lobby that is one of the strongest voices in the bloc and plays an outside role in policymaking, considering that the sector has been shrinking for years. Keep in mind, right, the Common Agricultural Policy is worth about $65 billion a year, about 40% of the European Union budget. And here you see environmental advocates defeating the farmers and livestock sector lobbyists who we would think are so powerful, right? Because they have the money. What do environmental advocates have? They don't have the money that the agricultural industry has. And so this must be part of the ongoing ordinary legislative procedure, and the Parliament has refused to ban the term veggie burger. And I don't know what the council has done on this topic. One can probably find out by Googling or going to the Europa website. I assume that the Council of the European Union has already adopted a position, but I don't see any reference to the Council of the European Union in this news report, which tells me that, well, may imply that the Council of the European Union, the Council of Ministers, right, that they have passed the rule, they have been more sympathetic to the agricultural lobby, that they were more sympathetic to the farmers in terms of banning the term veggie burger, but the Parliament has defeated it, and so since the European Parliament doesn't agree, it can't be there, because the European Parliament has to agree in this co-decision process, the ordinary legislative procedure. It goes on here, labels for plant-based dairy alternatives like soy milk or tofu butter are illegal in the bloc after dairy producers won a 2017 ruling backed by the European Court of Justice. So that's interesting. I didn't know that. Next time I go to Italy to visit my relatives, I'll know that I cannot find soy milk in the Italian supermarkets because they're not allowed to call it soy milk like we call it soy milk in the US, or I don't know what they call it here in Korea. Milk, a beverage made from soybeans, if they call it milk or something else. What else to highlight here? And I just want to conclude here. Some said the proposal would provide more fodder for what critics call the European Union's penchant for overregulation. That some people are going to complain that the European Union is overstepping, overreaching in its powers, and the dangers it's going to promote a populist Brexit type backlash, that national farmers in France or national farmers in Italy that really wanted the term burger and steak to refer to meat are going to be very unhappy and are going to be more supportive of anti-European Union parties or Eurosceptic parties in the next European Parliament elections as a response to this. And that's a concern, right? That with Brexit, we do know that countries can leave the European Union. And Emmanuel Macron, president of France, he made a statement just a few days ago, of course, about how he said, if a referendum similar to the Brexit referendum on whether or not to leave the European Union had been held in France, it might well have passed in France. he made that statement not very well, just a few days ago. And so this is a concern that, okay, you can say, well, they followed the rules and everything, and that's true. The European Union ordinary legislative procedure was followed, the rules were followed, and so it's legal, and that's true. But one has to be concerned about populist backlash, conservative populist backlashes, funded and supported by sectors of the society and economy that are threatened by Europeanization. I mean, I would assume most people involved in the agricultural sector in the European Union are not going to be those who are most supportive of globalization, right? Except insofar as they can export their goods to be sold to other countries. But in the United States, for example, Donald Trump's strongest support comes from rural areas, despite the intensive dependency that those farmers in the United States have on exporting and on international trade and globalization of trade. I think a third of American agricultural production, something like a third maybe of, I don't know if it's all agricultural production or of just grains, but a significant, large minority of American agricultural production is exported. But still, they are also among the strongest supporters of Donald Trump. And that's the concern, that these kinds of policies may mobilize these people on behalf of Euroscepticism. And I just wanted to note here that Alexander Stubb, a former prime minister of Finland, said the bloc should legislate only where there are impediments to the free movement of goods, services, money, and people. Like, in other words, the bloc should not have, the European Union should not have adopted a policy here. If the French want to call it soy milk, fine. But if the Germans don't, there shouldn't be a European Union policy established. He described the amendment as overkill that would bolster the arguments of those who campaigned for Britain's exit from the bloc, from the European Union. This is one of these symbolic, sad cases, a bit like legislating on the curve of cucumbers. And the reason why I mention this is because Alexander Stubb, he's a member of the European Parliament, a former prime minister of Finland, and he used to be one of the co-authors of your textbook. In previous editions of the textbook that we're using, in the earlier editions, he was one of the editors, along with Keneally and, well, not the editor, he was an author. He might have been an editor as well. He was listed as an editor and author, but then he, when he entered the European Parliament as a member of the European Parliament, he decided he couldn't do that anymore. But he was one of the contributors to your textbook that you're using in the earlier editions. Okay, so all right, how about an exercise? Let's do a poll. And so let's see, what kind of polling do we have here? So before we do a poll, let me do a coronavirus vaccine exercise here. And so, of course, the European Union claims that it is trying to be a global leader in promoting the global good. And so I need to make sure I share that screen. I have to find that screen. No, I don't want to do that. So if I do that, I can't share the screen. And so go like this, we go share screen. And okay, so, and see if I can find the screen. Okay, so it says we are sharing. So this person is the Director General of the World Health Organization, Tedros Adhanom Ghebreyesus from Ethiopia. Ethiopia is an emerging market of 100 million people, growing at rapid paces. So there's a lot of investor interest in Ethiopia. He notes that they are coordinating the world effort to develop a vaccination effort for the entire planet, right? COVAX. And this is a report from September, a month ago, in which you heard Ursula von der Leyen mention that 187 countries have signed on to COVAX. 187 countries out of about 200 in the whole world have agreed to participate, which I assume involves sharing information, cooperating, coordinating with others, vaccine producers, agreeing to limit one's own distribution in favor of another country's distribution if another country is closer and has a, I mean, you know, so for maybe, for example, agreeing that China should be responsible for vaccinating countries on its border because it's right next door, and the Americans should try to avoid trying to dominate the Vietnamese market for vaccines, for example. I don't know, but the point is that US, China, and Russia were absent, refused. Of course, these countries claim to be the leading powers of the world. US and China, yeah, sure. Russia is engaged in a policy of trying to convince the world it is still one of the leading powers of the planet, on planet Earth, even though, as I mentioned in our meetings, that Russia's entire economy is about the size of Italy's economy, or something like Spain, Italy, and South Korea is about the size of the Russian economy. But these three countries that portray themselves or are assumed by the rest of the world as somehow being the leading powers of the planet refuse to sign up for COVAX. And so you can see the Director General emphasizing that lots of people are poor and can't afford the vaccine if they have to pay for it, but still they all have to be vaccinated if we're going to overcome this problem for the human well-being around the planet. Everybody has to be taken care of, but a lot of countries and people don't have the money to pay for these viruses. However, numerous countries have signed their own bilateral deals with vaccine makers, and if they have declined to participate to use the COVAX facility to secure their own vaccines, including China, Russia, and the United States. So some of you are in my American foreign policy class. We talk about realism and liberalism versus constructivism, and constructivism is discussed a bit in the book. I think the other theories are also briefly mentioned in the textbook. Of course, the Americans, the Russians, or Chinese are trying to increase their influence around the world, and so they want countries to commit to their vaccines and thereby be more closely dependent upon Beijing or Washington or Moscow. Gavi is an organization that was set up by Bill Gates, and I think it was set up by Bill Gates. So if we go to Wikipedia here, I think I have a Wikipedia site. I don't have a Wikipedia site open. I wanted to highlight, of course, the role of interest groups, because next week we're going to start reading about interest groups and how policy is made in the European Union. So what is Gavi? Gavi is the Vaccine Alliance. And so I need to go back to share, stop share, and go share, just to show you the important role of interest groups in these efforts here, in these global efforts. Gavi, the Vaccine Alliance, is a public-private global health partnership with the goal of increasing access to immunization in poor countries. And I think it was Bill Gates played a powerful role in setting this up. So Bill Gates, it said in the period of 2016 to 2020, before the pandemic began, the UK was Gavi's largest, and Bill and Melinda Gates were powerful actors here. So again, here is an interest group, a public-private partnership program. So back to the article, and let me see if I can go back to the share screen, and I think this is it, and not that one. Okay, so they need to provide 2 billion doses of this vaccine by the end of next year. The Director General emphasizes of the Director General of the World Health Organization, this is not a charity, it's in every country's best interest. Sink or swim together, he said. Use your microphone. It says here that the $15 million is needed to purchase the necessary vaccines, and so here's the exercise. So So 72 countries, that's now up to 187 countries. And China announced that it is going to participate. Recently, a couple of weeks ago, China announced that it will sign up for COVAX. But US and Russia are not. Okay? US and Russia still are not signed up for COVAX. The European Commission is backing the COVAX scheme, as are UK, Australia, Canada, and Japan. France is said to be ready to provide funding for the World Health Organization project, but is opting to secure its own provisions via a joint EU scheme. And again, it looks like the Europeans are cooperating together within the COVAX program as part of the European Union. And here is the role play. The Chosun Ilbo would like the EU comments regarding the news reporting that the US and Russia are not participating in COVAX project. So you are now, I want you to role play. You are now actors representing the offices of the European Union. So Chun Hyung Chue, you are President Sassoli of the European Parliament. Jarno Verschelden, you are the leader of the right wing in the European Parliament. And Cho Hyun Chun, you are leader of the left in the European Parliament. And the leader of the Greens is Choi Hwa Kyung. You are leader of the Greens, the environmentalists in the European Parliament, the globalists. You're most globally oriented, right? And then Tang Hyun Kyung, you are Kwan, sorry. Tang Hyun Kwan, you are Ursula von der Leyen, yay! And Melis Juvin, you are the High Representative for the European Foreign Affairs and Security Policy. So you're, in effect, the Foreign Minister of the European Union, although that's not your official title, because that was rejected by the Constitution Treaty that failed. So you are Vice President of the Commission and the High Representative for the European Union for Foreign Affairs and Security Policy. The Executive Vice President of the Commission is Frans Timmermans. He's in charge of the European Green Deal, and that is Sang-un Pak. Okay, Sang-un Pak is in charge of that position. And the Executive Vice President for Digital Issues, like we just talked about, developing a COVID application for the European Union. I assume that Margarita Vestager would play a leading role in that regard, right? That's Laura Steyert. Yay, Laura! And the Commissioner for the Economy in charge of, can you imagine that? I mean, this is the commissioner that will probably play a leading role in buying up selling those Corona bonds in order to gain loans to provide to the member states to stimulate their economies, right? When the European Commission goes into debt, acquires a debt. And then the European Council, the president of the European Council is Charles Michel. He's the president of the European Council. He's like the Secretary General of the European Council. That's Kim Hyun-chul. The president of Poland is Andrzej Duda. And it's under his party that Poland passed the laws and basically made abortion illegal in Poland. So very right wing. That's Claire Jouet. French President Emmanuel Macron is Antoine Jumel, I think, right? Antoine is President Emmanuel Macron of France. The Prime Minister of Italy, Giuseppe Conte, is Song Min-ju. The Hungarian Prime Minister, Viktor Orban, the illiberal problem of the European Union in terms of his policies, along with Poland, is Lee Sang-moon. German Chancellor Angela Merkel, the de facto or supposed or not official leader of the European Union, that's not a key. Hooray! Spanish Prime Minister is Pedro Sanchez, and that's Pak Hyo-ryong. Spain is facing a lot of challenges regarding the coronavirus, but also political issues regarding Catalonia and the Basque Country, particularly Catalonia, since its leadership wants to leave Spain and form its own separate country that will be in the European Union as a separate country. The Greek Prime Minister that is already deeply in debt and borrowed $400 billion or 350 billion euros from the Greek financial crisis is Lee Hyun-ji. And the Estonian Prime Minister is Jüri Ratas, John Hyun. And Estonia, of course, is the leader in digital technology, one of the leaders in digital technology in the European Union. And it is playing an impressive role for a small country. And it was the first country, for example, to be attacked by Russian hackers, by Cozy Bear and the other hacking groups. Estonia, we first heard these stories about Russian hackers engaging in cyber warfare 12, 13 years ago, when I was still in Bulgaria. Estonia was attacked, cyber attacked. Estonia used to be part of the Soviet Union. A large percentage of the population, minority, are Russians, and they're not officially even citizens of Estonia, because Estonia believes they were they settled into Estonia when Estonia was illegally occupied by Moscow since 1940, since World War II. And so there's a third of the population living in Estonia are not officially Estonian citizens. And so it's a big conflict issue. And the president of the European Central Bank is Christine Lagarde. That's Chung-Young Chue. Yay! So get into your right mindsets. And I think the easiest way to proceed is just to divide you up randomly into 4 different groups and respond to the Chosun Ilbo, the Korean newspaper. Would like the European Union comments regarding the news that US and Russia still are not going to participate in COVAX, although China agreed that it is. And they want to know, what is US and Russia response, since China announced just a week or 2 ago that it will participate in COVAX, that it is the true global citizen. It is truly motivated to look out for the well-being of humanity along with the European Union. But US and Russia, no. Okay, so let's stop screen share and go into breakout rooms, and let's put you into 4 and assign automatically like this, and come up with a position response, and know who you are, remember who you are, and come up with a position come up with a position response to the Chosun Ilbo. And I'm not going to tell you who's in charge. You decide who's in charge from your positions in the European Union. Okay? So that person, whoever's in charge, is going to be the one that's going to speak to Chosun or respond to the reporters from Chosun Ilbo, the South Korean newspaper, as to China's joining COVAX, but US and Russia still saying, "Ani-yo." What's European Union perspective on Russia and US position on the behavior of Moscow and Washington in this regard? So let me open the rooms. And so go. So come up with, join your rooms and come up with a position. And keep in mind, there is no European Union God who will tell you who's in charge. Their European Union is as the European Union does. And the European Union doesn't have a sovereign government that says, I'm the one in charge here. It's all about consensus and collaboration, cooperation. And you're going to find it's difficult. It's meant to be difficult, right? So respond to the Chosun Ilbo reporter who wants European Union views on China and Russia, US and Russia still not agreeing to participate in the COVAX project. Go. I guess, of course, if you have questions, you can ask me, but then I think I'll have to role play myself. I will not be the God of the European Union. I will play your staff, your assistants in this process. So if the other actors are not available in your group, they haven't joined, well, then you have to take charge and do it yourself. Hyun Chung Song. Hello, who's in the room? Okay, so you're in charge. Since nobody else is apparently there, I'll let you, you're going to have to take charge yourself and decide how you're going to respond, right?
Right.
And of course, you might just say you have no comment. That's always also an option. But, you know, or you might refer the Chosun Ilbo newspaper reporter to the European Commission or to the High Representative of the Common Foreign Security Policy, or whatever. It's up to you to decide how you're going to respond.
So I'm Estonia, right, sir? Because I don't think my name was called out.
Whatever you are on that list.
Right, the list from way back when.
John Hugh, yeah.
Yeah, right. Then I should be Estonia. Yeah, this is tough, but I'll try to figure something out.
Of course, you're the Estonian Prime Minister, so you can speak in your position as a European Union representative, or you can decide to speak as an Estonian government representative. But you're probably going to have to announce that to whoever you're being interviewed by, right? You know, just say speaking, and I'm your staff member advising you now, saying speaking as a minister of the Estonian government, or speaking as in my position as a representative of the European Union. But you have to decide, okay, how you're going to, or you just decide, well, I really don't have a position. It's up to you. But keep in mind, anything you say is going to be seen by potentially 7.5 billion human beings around the planet. Right? And you're a professional politician. You have, your whole career has been oriented towards considering public opinion. You don't breathe without thinking about its impact on public opinion, particularly Estonian public opinion among the Estonians and the Russians and everybody else there, and now around the European Union, around the whole world. So, like I said, you don't breathe without thinking about its impact on public opinion, because that's what you do. You talk for a living. So there is no right or wrong way to respond here, right?
Right.
I mean, you just have to figure it out.
Yeah, I think I got a
Okay.
idea. Very rough though.
Okay.
Let's see. Hey, I got a teammate now. Hey, hey, can you unmute your mic for a second? Or not? You see the other guy right there over there, right, sir? Cho Hyun-jun.
Yeah.
Oh. Let's see. So Estonia used to be part of Russia. part of the Soviet Union. How close are they, sir?
What, Russia and Estonia?
Yeah.
Well, right next to each other. They were part of they were both republics in the Soviet Union.
Right. Let's see. China. I mean, I guess I could take like a really like political stance, couldn't I? Like, be like,
Well, it's up to
like
you.
say some jargon.
I mean, you're an ambitious politician as well. You might have some dreams of someday becoming a commissioner in the European Union or a president of the European Union. I mean, there's your Wikipedia website.
So from what I'm reading, it's like he doesn't seem like someone like incredibly significant or anything. Like,
Well, I mean,
he has a big footprint.
That's an interesting comment. I mean, you know, from another point of view, one could argue that that's one of the benefits of the European Union is that small countries get a lot more high-profile image and bargaining leverage in international affairs because of the European Union. I mean,
Yeah.
we talked about in a previous class. I mean, one of the reasons that the European Union assigns powerful positions in the European Union, like for example, this person is the he was a former leader in Belgium. He's now the president of the European Union, president of the European Council, and he's got that position because he's from Belgium, because Belgium is small and a small country. And so there were other member states of the European Union are more likely to trust this person because he doesn't represent, you know, it doesn't de facto or imply representing the power of a big country. I mean, if he was German, you know, I mean, that's a big deal. So far, all presidents of the European Council come from small countries, right? Or not small countries, but relatively weak countries, like Belgium or Poland.
So relatively weaker countries would act like a mediator in a way.
Yeah. You know, and Europe, of course, Estonia also is one of the countries that was dominated and controlled by the Soviet Union. And so, you know, they're on the front lines of dealing with an assertive, powerful Russia. And there's some concern that maybe something bad could happen in Estonia, something similar to what happened in Ukraine and Moldova and Georgia, with Russia somehow intervening and destabilizing the country. Because as I said, about you know, a large minority of the population are Russians living in Estonia who don't have Estonian citizenship. Who's in charge of room 2? Did you decide?
So, three of us all can't get a clear idea of what the Joseon Ilbo is technically saying.
As I said, the newspaper, South Korean newspaper, Joseon Ilbo wants European Union opinions about the fact that Russia and US are still not participating in the COVAX project to get a vaccine for the whole world against the COVID-19 virus. And so you got an inquiry from Joseon Ilbo newspaper. And so how are you going to respond? And I asked you to role play the actors that you were assigned that I didn't, this is the first time we've done anything with this since I asked you to choose a position to play. And so Jumel, you are, I think you're Emmanuel Macron of France, hooray! So you have to decide who's in charge. in your little group to respond, and how you're going to, and not to mention decide how you're going to respond. Are you seeing that? Anything else? Okay, I'll go to the other group here.
그 강의 자료 중에서
네.
그 강의 자료 막그
네,
두
노트
번째
말씀하신. 네.
네, 노트 아까 수업하신 그거 같은데
This is what, group 3. Naraki, Tanghyun Kwan, Tungju Yu, and Chewe Kyung. Who are you? You prepared? You're preparing your position, your response to the Chosun Ilbo newspaper reporter.
We still finding the newspaper.
Yeah, this is the news report here. I think you can see it. I don't know. I have to always check on this. So share screen, and here. Okay. I think that's it. Okay, so one more minute, 2 more minutes. One minute. $20 seconds. Okay, so here we are back in our main session. So let's go to the groups here. And so Group 1, the Chosun Ilbo, role play, the Chosun Ilbo Korean newspaper reporter has sent you a message, an email, let us say, asking for your response to the ongoing refusal of US and Russia to join the World Health Organization COVAX project to bring vaccines to the whole world when they become available after China announced that it will participate in COVAX. What is the European Union response? Group 1.
I'm speaking on behalf of the Estonian government.
Estonian government. Okay, not the European Union. Interesting. Okay.
So the Estonian government is currently looking at the situation, both in the parts of the US, Russia, China, and the European Union, and of course ourselves. It's hard to come down with a decision immediately, but we want to keep our citizens rest assured that we are working towards a good direction and we are going on with good talks.
So the Chosun Ilbo reporter would like a follow-up and ask a further question. Since
Yes,
Estonian and Russian relations are difficult, do you think that Russia's refusal to participate in the COVAX project is due to resentment over European Union extension of its influence into territories that are part of that Russia views as its traditional sphere of influence?
So I guess I could acknowledge that there were a few news on the media recently, and there has also been a history between our two nations. But once again, I want to say that we are working towards a better direction, and there have been a lot of positive talks between our two governments. So rest assured.
Thank you very much. I know you're very busy. We're all very busy. This is one of many issues that you're confronting today and in your activities. So, and I've got things to do too. I got deadlines to meet. I've got to write my report and submit it to my editor at Chosun Ilbo by 11 o'clock. So thank you very much. And let's keep in touch, huh? Next time something comes up, I'll make sure I keep you in mind. All right. Thank you.
Thank you for your time.
Okay, group 2, who's speaking for the European, what is the European Union's response to this latest development of China joining COVAX, but America and Russia still refusing to join COVAX?
I'll tell to the representative of group 2, but actually we couldn't decide specifically, but I want to say you as a perspective, the president of the European Council, the Charles Michael, and actually the European, the COVID-19 situation is getting worse, and as the European Council and the representing of the European, the headmaster, I want to tell you that the European member states have to get together and have to find out and make find out to get through the bad situation. And actually, this situation of the second pandemic disease will going to reduce the global economy situation. So I think the European the member states have to get together all the time.
Chosun Ilbo reporter would like to follow up and ask, is there anything the European Union can do to persuade US and Russia to participate in the COVAX project?
Can you say it again?
Is there anything the European Union can do to persuade the Trump administration in the United States and the Putin administration in Russia to participate in the COVAX project?
Yes, they have to participate into the European situation, and I think they have to follow the rule of the world economic the system, and they have to prepare all the things that they can do.
If I could ask another question, do you think if Donald Trump is defeated on November 3rd in US presidential elections and a Biden administration comes into office, that the US will be more cooperative with the European Union on COVAX, on the COVAX project and other projects like the global climate change, rejoining the Paris, not 2015 Paris Climate Accord, for example?
I think the Donald Trump doesn't want to do that because like he's keeping their policy as a closing door and American first policies. But maybe if Joe Biden will elect it, I think he'll going to do that.
Okay, okay. All right, so, and now group three. And so let me go to group three and so group three, who's speaking for group three? What is the European Union perspective on China joining COVAX, but the US and Russia continuing to refuse to join the COVAX program? Group three? Group three? Hello? Nobody is in the office in the European Union at these four positions. Well, I'm the Chosun Ilbo newspaper reporter, and I am going to have to report that after numerous attempts to communicate with these individuals in the European Union, I received no response. I'll have to put that in the newspaper. These individuals did not respond to Chosun Ilbo messages asking for a response of the European Union to China's announcement to participate in the COVAX project, while Russia and US have refused to participate. Okay, okay. Group four. What about group four? Room four. What is the European Union's response to this update that China is going to participate in COVAX, but not Russia, still not Russia and US?
Countries like Italy and Spain were both affected by coronavirus a lot, and the COVAX vaccines should be ready. And if the United States and Russia, which are very powerful nations, if they do not participate in this, it will be very difficult for international cooperation.
Yes, yes. True. Good. Okay. I will put that down in my newspaper report in Chosun Ilbo. Thank you very much. Thank you. And so I think I want to now go to the poll. So regarding your positions and vote now on this poll. Will the US and Russia, let's see, why isn't it showing? Launch poll, okay. Will the US and Russia eventually participate in the World Health Organization COVAX project? One, very likely, neutral, cannot decide, unlikely, very unlikely. Thirty seconds. $15 seconds. 10 seconds. 5, 3, 1. Here are the results. You think it's likely? Well, some are neutral, cannot decide. What's my view? It's hard for me to believe that the United States would not participate in this. If Trump because I'm assuming Trump is not going to remain president. If that Joe Biden will become president, but I could be wrong. If Trump remains president, he may attempt to set up his own global American-led coalition to distribute the vaccines, but not through the World Health Organization, and only to American friends. So he's not going to give it to Iran. He's not going to give it to, well, would he give it to North Korea? If he thought he could get something out of it, like the North Koreans would make a move towards denuclearization, but not to Iran and not to the Syrian government. So yeah, I can imagine that. But Trump is already talking about cutting off all American aid and assistance to the World Health Organization. But China has stepped in and saying it will participate. Okay, so let me stop sharing there. And what other polls do I have here? So here's another poll. Is the European Union a civilian superpower? Why isn't it? What did I do? Oops. It should be big so we can see it all. Okay, respond to the following statement. The EU is a civilian superpower. "30 seconds. "15 seconds. "5 seconds. Okay, and the result is here. So some of you think it is, and trying to understand what that means in terms of influence, not based upon threat and use of military force and shock and awe technology, military technology, but rather through soft power. That the European Union has influence in the world roughly equivalent to a US or China because of its role as an economic power, trade partner, and a standard bearer for global human rights, including sustainable development, green sustainable development, dealing with the climate change. Okay, we'll have to talk more about that a little bit later. But now we should go to our debate. We should go to our debate to make sure we have enough time for it. And let me go back to the lesson plan that has the debate topic in it. And I can close that. We're done with that. And let me see if I can find the debate topic. Oops, what did I just do? Okay, I have to find the lesson plan. Where's the lesson plan? I can close that. And I can save that, yeah. And key policies. And we go to the lesson plan. Okay, so there you see the lesson plan. To South Koreans, the EU's response to the consequences of the COVID-19 pandemic are steps forward to creating a United States of Europe. So who's going to keep time for me? Because I'm in a debate, so I can't keep time. Who's going to keep time for, I can try, but ideally somebody who's done the debate can help out by keeping time. So somebody who's not Hyo Ryong, because she's always done it in the past because she's had me in other classes. But if need be, I can do it on my own. Anybody volunteer?
I'll do for you.
Okay, so remember 6 minutes maximum for pro, 6 minutes maximum for con, then pro rebuts for up to 4 minutes, then con rebuts and concludes for up to 7 minutes, and then pro has the last word for up to 3 minutes.
66447
66473. 66473. And we're kind of loose on the time insofar as, for example, I don't need to use all my time because I do a lot of talking anyway. And I'm going to ask you to vote on who won the debate and to grade the debate, so you all know that. And then anonymously, you're going to vote anonymously on both of those. And we also have the chance to ask an extra credit question. Identify yourself and tell me who you are so I can give you 1 extra credit point if you ask a question to pro or con. Okay, so I'll start. All right, so let's say ready, set, go. And all right. Yeah, okay, so I argue pro, and you've heard me over the semester say that the European Union is moving more and more to acquire exceptional powers in response to this, not even once in a lifetime, once in a century crisis, a global pandemic that we have, we haven't seen anything like this since 1918. And the media reports that I've been following since this exploded under the world attention in early this year, make statements about how, for example, that this is the greatest economic crisis the world has faced since 1930, with the all the underlying implied consequences. We all know what happened as a result of the Great Depression, right? Mussolini was already in power in Italy since the early 1920s, but Hitler would not have come to power in Germany were it not for the economic depression in Germany as a response to the global depression that began in response to the American crisis, the American economic crisis in 1929. And so we see how is the European Union responding? The European Union, I mean, again, I just showed you how this textbook highlights that you're using that the European Union cannot acquire debt, cannot run a deficit. And that meant the European Union cannot borrow more, cannot spend more than it takes in terms of tax receipts. But now it is going to spend a lot more than it takes in tax receipts. The number that was mentioned in the news reports is 750 billion euros. I don't know how much of that is supposed to be loans, is supposed to be, I should say, financed by debt. I think I recall reading that half of it is supposed to be financed by the European Commission borrowing on international financial markets by selling bonds through the European Commission, and is going to start competing along with other countries, therefore, for access to these loans by selling bonds to investors. And so the European Union will take on debt. And keep in mind, this power has been granted to the European Commission, the European Union, without having a formal treaty negotiation process to amend the treaties. And I haven't seen any news report that they're planning to have a formal intergovernmental conference, an IGC in short, to negotiate amending the treaties to give officially the European Union institutions these powers. They've already done it. The member states have already done it. And the Council of Ministers and the European Parliament evidently have approved it. And that's really how the European Union is stealthily, slowly moving in this direction of acquiring these powers that we associate with a federal United States of Europe. The reason I think we might be blocked in our thinking by our old thinking about, a federation only exists in a sovereign state that's set up on the basis of a formal agreement to create a sovereign power, is that we're too much influenced by the history of traditional countries, of the existing actors in the world. Australia is a federal system that was created as part of originally as part of the British Empire, and then it left the British Empire, although not officially, not completely, because the Queen is still head of the state in Australia. But it was a colony that was governed by the British, and they set up institutions, and then that colony became formally sovereign or formally independent. Let's put it that way. United States is a federal system with the U.S. national government is sovereign, but that was set up after, that was established by civil war, right? That issue or question was settled through civil war that ended in 1865. You could make the argument, Europe already had its civil wars. Europe in World War I and World War II were European civil wars. In response to those civil wars, new systems of governance have emerged in a new 20th century, 21st century, 21st century environment. Not 19th century, not 18th century, 21st century. So the emphasis is on a sophisticated, highly developed, huge economic capabilities that require new forms of governance. Remember, the US Constitution was written when the country was still overwhelmingly agrarian, farmers. 90% of the population were farmers. Of course, the European Union, if it emerges as a de facto federation, okay, so they don't have a constitution treaty. The French said no. The Dutch said no in referendum. So they don't have an official constitution. But de facto, don't we see through neo-functional spillover and through liberal intergovernmentalism, this acquisition of
1
de
minute
facto,
left.
okay, this acquisition of de facto sovereign power by the European Union institutions? I mean, it's being seen as a sovereign actor. European Commission is going to be able to sell those bonds on the international financial markets, and people will buy them, and they will get low interest rate because the credibility and creditworthiness of those Corona bonds is going to be very, very high. So there's low risk because Germany's backing it up, right? So it looks to me that basically the world is going to treat the European Union as a United States of Europe in economics, at least in economics, the way they treat Germany and the United States and South Korea and France also.
10 seconds.
Okay, so that's my statement, and I will now let Hyoryong Khan will now speak.
Can I use the share screen?
Oh, okay. I'm sorry, I forgot to share screen, and let me do this here. Share. How do I got to remember how to do this. Share screen. I am trying to figure out how to, advanced, okay. Oh gosh. I'm wondering if I had to do this before we started the class. I had to set it up so that, stop share just a second here. Share screen. Oh, okay, multiple, okay, there we go. We're ready to go, Hyoryong. You can now begin.
Can you see
Yes,
it?
I can see it.
So this is the timetable of EU action in response to the COVID-19. The EU has been working on cooperative responses in various fields since the COVID-19 began to spread in China. They brought home European citizens from Wuhan, agreed on the recovery plan, and adopt a proposal for Council recommendation to ensure that any restriction on free movement taken by a member state is considered coordinated and clearly communicated at the EU level. The EU has established and implemented COVID-19 response strategies at a large scale, and each member state has taken detailed responses according to their own circumstance. This may seem similar to the way the United States responded to COVID-19 by dividing it into federal and state level. Then is the consequence of the EU response to the COVID-19 being seen as a step forward in the creation of the United States of Europe? I said no. There are two main reasons. First is the way the EU citizens view the EU after the crisis. Unlike many people worried about the rise of nationalism when the crisis first struck, the mainstream was the cooperation at the EU level should rather be strengthened, according to a recent poll by ECFR. Even some amount of nationalists has been found to think the need for EU cooperation, which occurred because they see cooperation between member states as a solution the crisis that a single nation cannot solve. They do not want to lose its sovereignty as the EU to become a United States of Europe, but rather strengthen its sovereignty by cooperation. Also, they think that the existence of their own country should still be a prerequisite before the EU as citizen of all countries do. Second, there is no significant difference before and after the crisis. Even before the crisis, the EU and member states showed similar way of making a policy. The EU comes up with a large framework of policies like guideline, and the government of each state has been working on detailed policies within the guideline to suit their own social circumstance. The same system was applied in the COVID-19 crisis. Also, the EU has no strong executive power to enforce its policies on its member countries, and it does not engage in political or cultural issues with complex interests. For those reasons, it is still hard to say that the consequence of the EU latest COVID-19 response is a step forward in the creation of the United States of Europe. That's it.
Any questions to Khan? Anybody want to ask an extra credit question to Pak Hyo-young? Going once, going twice, going 3 times. Okay, well, we still have time before the end of the debate. If you come up with a question and think about it now, you can ask it later. So I am now going to rebut Hyo-young's argument and go back to the, if I can, go back to the debate question here. So share screen, and let me see if I can find where I put, there it is, okay. And so you see it here. So Hyo-young made the argument that it's still overwhelmingly a national response of the different member states to the coronavirus. Yeah, I know, but the point is that they share best practice. They share and go out of their way through what's called the open system of coordination. I think it's in the notes here. You know that open system of coordination is highlighted in these notes right here. That they engage in the open system. Yeah, the open method of coordination of national policies. And they do it so closely. I mean, the way the Italians dealt with the pandemic, Italy was the first European mass outbreak, was in Italy, right? And so the Italians responded to it first. And now we know that they made some mistakes. Of course, we didn't know at the time that those were mistakes. But then the Spanish and the French and the British learned from those mistakes, or the British a little bit less well than the Spanish and the French. And they go out of their way to pay attention to each other's efforts, to communicate to each other regarding how they are, here in Italy, we're dealing with the problem. And the French and the Germans are always communicating, and the European Union institutions facilitate that cooperation, collaboration, coordination. So that, yeah, I mean, there's not the threat that if you don't obey the rules of Brussels, that ultimately we have sovereign authority and we can, deploy a European military, a European police force to enforce the rules adopted by Brussels. Sure, that's not happening, but we live in 2020, an era in which we have nuclear technology. in which war is between big powers is suicidal, of course, new forms of integration and creating and constructing, remember constructivism, constructing new forms of identity that go beyond the existing nation state will happen in new and different ways. They won't happen through war. The way Germany was united partly through Otto von Bismarck provoking war with first Denmark, and then with Austria itself, and then with France. That's not how new identities and new superordinate identities building, going beyond existing national identities, will emerge. And of course, identities always change and emerge. France is not immutable. South Korea is not immutable. Germany is not immutable. America is not immutable. Identities evolve and change along with the changing social context of economy, technology, and society. So, I mean, but is it still worthwhile to talk about the
1 minute left.
About the European Union as United States of Europe? I think it is, if we're going to talk about the role of the European Union as a sovereign actor that's able to borrow money, vast amounts of debt, billions and hundreds of billions of euros, if not more, on through the European Commission, through the European Central Bank, buying bonds, that it's being treated as a credible, ultimately control actor that's able to control its destiny.
30 seconds.
That's why the United States Treasury bonds are so cheap, so low interest rate, because the buyers of those bonds believes that the Americans are so powerful that they can control their economic resources. And that's what the world views about the European Union. De facto. Okay, that's my rebuttal. And now Khan will rebut and conclude. So you can go back to sharing the screen.
Not necessary. You said the United States of Europe is a new form of the political system, but anyway, taking federalism is being one country, as every federal state do, like Germany and America. They are all just one country, so even they have like separate states. So it means anyway it will going to be one sovereignty, not sharing each state's sovereignty. And also even the world already think the one they treat like European Union as a one country, but still the European citizen doesn't share that identity, like national identity. So they have their each national identity, and they share like European culture or European things, but their own national identity is first than European culture. And you mentioned the best practice about the crisis, and I think it is like it is close to benchmarking, but even they had like communication, and even there exists as a separate country, they can still communicate about the crisis and how to deal that, because like Korea share with other countries about the COVID crisis, how to solve the COVID crisis. So it cannot connect it with the federal. I think it's hard to connect it with the federal system. That is the all rebut I do. And my conclusion is, as the impact of the EU has grown much larger and in various areas than 60 years ago, each government has engaged in a new action or changes their practice in certain policy area. In the process, the argument that the EU may be on the same path as a federal state has pre-existed. However, we don't know if the EU wants to become a powerful country under control through the federal system, and EU citizens won't support European integration even when they lose their national sovereignty. Therefore, the creation of the United States of Europe still be a little bit difficult, not only because it's a very complicated process, but also because there is no social consequence. That's it.
Okay, here's your next chance to get an extra credit point by asking a question to Hodion. Anybody want to get that juicy, tasty, sweet extra credit point?
Only Hyorion?
I have, yeah.
Yi Sang Moon. Yi Sang Moon is asking a question, so let me write down that name.
Only
so that,
Hyorion, or can I ask to you, or?
Well, Yi Sang Moon, are you Yi Sang Moon?
Yeah.
Okay, ask your question.
Can I ask to you?
Yeah.
So I heard about that. You said that EU and the communicate with each country, but I think in page 103 443 there are still the most important and sensitive issues like co-response like to COVID-19 are still takes place in closed rooms. So I wonder if the European countries can communicate or compromise their different stance.
Okay, okay, I have that question. Anybody else have a question?
Yes, I have.
And who are you?
It's Tae Hee Kyung.
Chae Si Kyung?
Tae Hee Kyung is.
Kyung, okay. Okay. Go ahead, ask.
I would ask to you, what's the major character that distinguishes the EU from the United States of Europe?
Well, I mean, again, history never repeats itself, but it does rhyme, right? So yeah, I mean, we might not ever see an official name for the United States of Europe, but that's because the context is different from the integration of the Americans into one country versus the integration of China into one country 2,000 years ago, or the integration of the three Korean kingdoms 1,500 years ago, Pekja, Shilla, and Koguryo. I mean, now we're in the 21st century, right? So we're not going to have integration the way we had it in the 18th or 19th or even the 20th century when Hitler tried to integrate the world under German conquest. It's not going to happen that way. Integration happens in different ways with today. And hey, so it might not officially ever be United States of Europe, but it's seen as a powerful central actor enough that it can sell hundreds of billions of euro bonds on the international debt market. Hey, you just voted, the majority of you, that the European Union is a civilian superpower. How can you view the European Union as a civilian superpower unless you believe it's a real powerful ultimate authority in European behavior and thinking? Yeah, I know the response to the pandemic has been primarily national, but that's true about everything we do in this world, right? Actually, the most important pandemic response, one of the most important, is about your family and you and me. How do we respond to the pandemic? How do we change our behavior in response to requests from our governments and the European Union about changing our behavior? Avoid crowds, and how we purposely choose not to do certain things, how we choose to wear these masks, right? What happens if I don't wear this mask? I might be caught, I might not be caught, but I wear this mask because I think I should wear this mask, right? I should wear this mask to protect myself and to protect others. I change my behavior. And we see the Europeans are changing our behavior. And just to conclude on my comments, remember your midterms. A lot of you argued that the European Union has more impact on the member states than the member states have on the European Union. Even though the European Union doesn't have a police force, the European Union doesn't have an army that it can enforce. What do you mean by that then? Right? What do you mean by that? You mean that the European Union is emerging as a superordinate community building upon the building blocks of the member states to create something higher, and it's more than the sum of its parts. And we try to explain what that is, what's emerging, and we look to the history, but history, again, is not completely appropriate, because what created the United States of America in 1787 is different conditions and context completely from what's creating the European Union in the 20th and 21st century. So on that argument, you can say that clearly something is happening in terms of people's thinking, perceptions, attitudes, and worldview. Remember, like I said earlier before, the European Union, France, Japan, South Korea, Belgium, they only exist here. America, they only exist here. That's the only place they exist. And you know they exist through people's behavior, individually and collectively. What, 30 seconds? Individually.
I have a question.
Yeah.
Yeah. I heard that the European countries are basically like really different countries. So how can we overcome the traditional and the idealistic things like the World War II and the Nazism?
Well, we might not. I mean, there's still lots of nationalists in the U.S. like to support Trump or Brexit or in France or in Germany. Yeah, there's a lot of people that are threatened by this superordinate community emerging. It's challenging. They think it's challenging the sovereignty of France and Britain and Italy, and they're afraid of that. They don't like that. You and I, we're not so afraid of it. We kind of like it.
So you compare the Chinese is not aware of that the China is not the uni-ethnic countries, but I think you have to compare between the Korea and Japanese imperialism like a long time ago in the World War II.
Well, you think the European Union is comparable to the greater East Asian co-prosperity sphere of Japan?
Because the Nazism talking about.
Who's not talking? I mean, who's dominating?
Nazi.
Well, yeah, I mean, but that's not the case with the European Union. I mean, do you have to integrate a country through conquest? That clearly fails. That failed by Hitler. That failed by Napoleon. That failed by Louis XIV. If you're going to create the perpetual peace project that Immanuel Kant so much favored, you're going to have to kind of integrate Europe in a way that doesn't directly threaten the national identities of the actors, at least in thinking of the majority of people. There will always be a minority of people that support Trump and Brexit, and there are nationalists, but hopefully they can be contained. But okay, so I got all three of you down, okay, and so I'll make sure you get extra credit points for those questions. But now we have to go to our vote on who won the debate. And so again, it's anonymous. So 1 minute, please vote. Who won the debate? Thirty seconds. $15 seconds. Okay, and so we end the poll and share the results. And there you see the results. So most of you say no. Well, half of you say no. The other half neutral or don't know or maybe. Okay, and one other poll before we finish. Grade the debate. 1 minute. Thirty seconds. Ten seconds. And there are the results. Hooray! Okay, so that's it. And I'm going to end the class now so I can save this file before I have to start the next class. So does anybody have any questions? If not, I will end the meeting. Bye.
Thanks.
Thank you, sir.